After 5 decades of nurturing lives, OB Montessori Center has become the largest Montessori-based education system in the world. Having touched the lives of more than 250,000 students from preschool to high school, having graduated over 25,000 students who have excelled in their fields, the humanities, sciences, business, politics, communication, and sports. Today, as we celebrate 50 golden years of the OB Montessori experience in the Philippines, we welcome you all to the Professional High School Elocution Finals. This afternoon, we will witness the oratorical prowess of the Montessori students. Poetry declamation has been part of the OB Montessori program since 1988. It aims to train OBMC students in public speaking in the form of poetry, declamation, oratory, and elocution, to familiarize themselves with the recitation of English poetry of any kind, whether it be sad, inspirational, or comforting, help develop self-confidence and self-esteem within every student who is trained individually and in groups to recite poems and declamation pieces with distinction and fluency. The Poetry and Declamation Program was established by our speech and poetry consultant, the eloquent and dynamic Mrs. Mercedes Sullivan David. Let us all stand for the opening prayer to be led by Aska Fukamachi of Grade 9 Emerald.
Let us remember that we are in the presence of the Lord. Lord, we believe from you all good things come. You have endowed with us gifts, making us realize how much you love us. From this day onwards, may we continuously be inspired and blessed with talents. Grateful as we are, we promise to use and share these gifts to the best of our abilities with your guidance. Lord, make your warm presence be felt today as we gather as one family. To Angelic Victoria, we invoke your aid throughout this activity and always. Let your Holy Grail direct us to become better children and citizens of the nation. This we ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Please remain standing for the Philippine National Anthem to be led by Nina Sapitula of Grade 7 Emerald and the OB Montessori hymn to be led by Bianca Carlos of Grade 9 Ruby.
Tumayo ng tuwid at ilagay ang kanang kamay sa kaliwang dibdib at sabay-sabay natin nawitin ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Bayang magiliw, handa awit. Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay, lupang hinirang, tuyang ka ng magiting sa manlulubig. Di ka pasisiil sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw. May dilaghang tula at awit sa paglaya minamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niyang kailan, pag may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw, lalwat, hatik pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Amin ligaya ng pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
ad dolore ad gloriam, from pains to gains. That is the Montessorian, the vessel of the flame, concentrating to all the works, striving for order and joy, obedience, love for work. We are friendly to all. We carry the light of nations towards the future to see. Love of silence, peace and harmony. Learning is a need to life. We are one, united body, standing independently, same sum facit persona. Man makes himself. We carry the light of nations towards the future to see. Love of silence, peace and harmony. Learning is an aid to life. We are guided by the wisdom of Maria Montessori. Achieving our goals is an aim to reach. Oh, be Montessori, beloved alma mater. We live in gratitude forever.
You may now take your seats. Thank you, Nina and Bianca. In today's activity, we have 12 elocution contestants who will vie for the gold, bronze, and silver medals. The contestants have drawn lots to determine who will go first, and they have been numbered accordingly. The contestants will be rated according to the following criteria: memory, 20%, expression, 30%, articulation, 25%, voice projection, 10%, stage presence, 15%, for a grand total of 100%. May we remind the audience to refrain from clapping, cheering, or making unnecessary remarks or actions that may cause undue distractions to the contestants or bias on the part of the judges. More so, coaching while the participant is delivering his piece is discouraged. May I also request the audience to refrain from standing and going to and from the restroom during the entire activity. You may clap or show appreciation after all the contestants have delivered their pieces. And so, at this point, without much delay, let me present to you the 12 finalists for this year's Elocution Finals. Let me call on the first 6 finalists to come on stage. I'm sure they are all ready, so let the competition begin. Jose Manalo, in his piece, tells us that all the world is but a stage, with each one of us playing his own respective role based on what each one of us can do and is expected to do. Manalo's premise holds much sense, since the world is but a stage. When the time demands assessment of our life's performance, in big, bold letters we must assert, no runs, no hits, no errors. Contestant number 1.
The World is But a Stage by Jose Manalo. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a customary greeting in our country. When we see a bosom friend, or even just a casual acquaintance passing by, we normally ask of him, "Saan ka pupunta? Where are you going?" Not that we really care, or that we should know where our friend is going. This is just a greeting, and the usual answer we get would be, "Diyan lang." Should we ask a foreigner the same question, chances are we would be considered rude, and we get a frown from him instead of a smile. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the crossroads of our lives. Saan ka pupunta? Diin ka makadto? Sinudta ti papanam? Donde vas, quo vadis? Yes, in whatever language, where are we going is now, one might say, the name of the game in our lives today. Should we take the wrong turn at the fork of the road in our life's journey, we could go nowhere very fast, or we could fall into a maze of unending frustrations. Frustrations over the disappointments, the meaninglessness, the empty experiences in our lives. If we should take the right direction on this road of life, we might come to realize our dreams, to fulfill our life's ambition, to enjoy some kind of fortune that would make us glad we were born. Ladies and gentlemen, at this stage in our lives, during our most youthful years, ours is not to save the whole world. This cannot be our sole responsibility. If we simply do our own little thing in every way we can and the best way we can, our job is done. Right now, our job is to grow up in the mind and in the heart, to learn especially from the mistakes of man, to learn all the possible lessons from the best that have come from the brain and the purpose of man. Certainly, there is need to recreate the world. Surely not because we are gods, no, but because this world, our world, is of our own making. Indeed, no man is entitled to moralize about poverty unless he contributes something towards the alleviation of that poverty. Certainly not by alms or by charity alone, but through a deep involvement in the problem itself. Ladies and gentlemen, let us look around us at the man in the street, at a home with his family in the slums of Tondo, San Andres, Pasay. Indeed, is this the handiwork of the Lord God? To have dominion over sea and land, to trace the stars and search the heavens for power, to feel the passion of eternity? There is no shape more terrible than this, more tongued with the censure of the world's blind greed. How will we ever straighten up this shape and touch it again with immortality? No one should specify what we should do. The search for what we can do is of our own individual initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, all the world is but a stage, with each one of us playing his own respective role according to what each one of us can do and is expected to do. And in the last reckoning, let it not be said of any of us that in this cockeyed world we contributed nothing, that at the end of this game of life, the scoreboard of our achievements would merely read, for everyone to see, plastered on the scoreboard or our life's performance. No runs, no hits, no errors. Thank you.
Patricia Evangelista impressed her competitors as well as her generally English-speaking audience when she grabbed the top slot in a public speaking tilt in London, England. Her third world origin did not derail her aspiration. On the contrary, it nurtured the depth of her ideas. She spoke of a more relevant concept of nationalism and of a borderless world. She touched on opportunities, boundaries, home. In her piece, she unraveled a borderless world. Contestant number 2.
A Borderless World by Patricia Evangelista. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was little, I wanted what many Filipino children all over the country wanted. I wanted to be blonde, blue-eyed, and white. I thought if I just wished hard enough and was good enough, I'd wake up on Christmas morning with snow outside my window and freckles across my nose. More than 4 centuries under Western domination can do that to you. I have 16 cousins. In a couple of years, there will be just 5 of us left in the Philippines. The rest will have gone abroad in search of greener pastures. It's not an anomaly, it's a trend. The Filipino diaspora. Today, about 8 million Filipinos are scattered around the world. There are those who disapprove of the Filipinos who choose to leave. I used to. Maybe this is a natural reaction of someone who was left behind, smiling for family pictures that get emptier with each succeeding year. Desertion, I called it. My country is a land that has perpetually fought for the freedom to be itself. Our heroes offered their lives in the struggle against the Spanish, the Americans, the Japanese. To pack up and deny that identity is tantamount to spitting on that sacrifice. Or is it? I don't think so, not anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, true, there is no denying this phenomenon. Aided by the fact that what was once the other side of the world is now a 12-hour plane ride away. But this is a borderless world where no individual can claim to be purely from where he is now. My mother is of Chinese descent. My father is a quarter Spanish. And I call myself a pure Filipino, a hybrid of sorts resulting from a combination of cultures. Each square mile, anywhere in the world, is made up of people of different ethnicities, national identities, and individual personalities. Because of this, each square mile is already a microcosm of the world. Inasmuch as this blessed spot that is England is the world, so is my neighborhood back home. Seen this way, the Filipino diaspora, or any sort of dispersal of populations, is not as ominous as so many claim. It must be understood. I come from a third world country, one that is still trying mightily to get back on its feet after many years of dictatorship. But we shall make it, given more time. Especially now, when we have thousands of eager young minds who graduate from college every year. They have skills. They need jobs. We cannot absorb them all. A borderless world presents a bigger opportunity, yet one that is not so much an abandonment, but an extension of identity. Even as we take, we give back. We are the 40,000 skilled nurses who support the United Kingdom's National Health Service. We are the 250,000 seafarers manning most of the world's commercial ships. We are your software engineers in Ireland, your construction workers in the Middle East, your doctors and caregivers in North America, and your musical artists in London's West End. Nationalism isn't bound by time or place. People from other nations migrate to create new nations, yet still remain essentially who they are. British society is itself an example of a multicultural nation, a melting pot of races, religious, arts, and cultures. We are indeed in a borderless world. Leaving sometimes isn't a matter of choice. It's coming back, that is. The hobbits of the Shire traveled all over Middle Earth, but they chose to come home, richer in every sense of the word. We call people like this the balikbayans, or the returnees. Those who follow their dream, yet choose to return and share their mature talents and good fortune. In a few years, I may take advantage of whatever opportunities that come my way. But I will come home. A borderless world does not preclude the idea of a home. I am a Filipino, and I'll always be one. It isn't about geography. It isn't about boundaries. It's about giving back to the country that shaped me. And that's going to be more important to me than seeing snow outside my window on a bright Christmas morning. Mabuhay and thank you.
In the not-so-distant past, there has been a lot of questions as to why Dr. Jose Rizal is the country's national hero. The great part of Dr. Rizal's relevance to the lives of Filipinos is, ironically, the fact that the social problems that our hero had fought for in his lifetime are tragically still plaguing our homeland today. This time, let us listen to this enlightening piece, Why Jose Rizal is the National Hero. Contestant number 3.
Why Jose Rizal is the National Hero by Abeth Ocampo. Ladies and gentlemen, what is a conscious hero? It is clear from Jose Rizal's letters, diaries, and writings that he had planned his entire life down to the last detail. He did not leave anything to chance, not even his death. He willfully became a hero. A Rizal story popped out of my notes, dealing with a time when Rizal's sisters found him in his Bahay Kubo, behind the Calamba home, molding a clay statue of Napoleon, who was small and short, like him. When teased about it, he is supposed to have said, "All right, you guys, say what you want today, because in the future, people will make monuments for me." I wonder what his sisters felt when they saw the Rizal monument rise up at the Luneta, or when they officiated at the unveiling ceremonies for the other monuments to their brother, which began to mushroom all over the archipelago. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe Jose Rizal could have lived beyond December 30, 1896. If only he had stayed out of the Philippines and its politics. If he remained in Hong Kong, he would have just been a forgotten expatriate Filipino doctor. Rizal, however, was different. One could say he had a death wish, and this, for me, makes him a conscious hero. Doubly brave. Because unlike military heroes whose job description contained death in battle, Rizal was a quiet, peaceful man who willfully and calmly walked to his death for his convictions. Before his execution, his pulse rate was reputedly normal. How many people do we know who would die for their convictions if they could avoid it? In June 1892, it was discovered that Rizal had left 2 sealed letters to a Portuguese friend to be opened and published after his death. In these letters, he explained to his family that he was returning to the Philippines to show, by example, that Filipinos knew how to die for their principles. Rizal decided to return home against all odds. And this is the letter he wanted us to read. A letter that would illustrate to all anti-Rizal advocates why Rizal is our national hero. He wrote, The steps that I have taken or am about to take are undoubtedly very risky. And it is unnecessary to say that I have pondered on it a great deal. I cannot live knowing many are suffering unjust persecution because of me. I cannot live seeing my brothers and their large families persecuted like criminals. I prefer to face death and gladly give my life to free so many innocent persons from unjust persecution. I know that at present, the future of my country gravitates in part around me, that with my death, many would rejoice, and then consequently, many are longing for my end. But what am I to do? I have duties of conscience above all else. I have moral obligations towards the families who suffer, towards my aged parents whose sighs pierce my heart. I know that I alone, even my death, can make them happy by returning them to their country and the tranquility of their home. My parents are all that I have, but my country has still many sons. Moreover, I wish to show those who deny us patriotism, that we know how to die for our duties and our convictions. What matters death if one dies for what one loves? One's country, and for those whom he loves. I have always loved my country, and I am sure that I shall love her until my last moment. Whatever my fate may be, I shall die blessing my country and wishing her the dawn of her redemption. Thank you.
If there is one trait that the Filipinos is known for, it is his ability to coin words with sense of humor. Juan de la Cruz would not run out of ideas, translating and adapting foreign words to suit his need, rendering it effective and entertaining. Sit back and relax as we listen to Wit of the Filipino. Contestant number 4.
Wit of the Filipino by Nuri Vitachi. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a sign on Congressional Avenue in Manila that says, "Parking for costumers only." This may be a misspelling of customer, but the Philippine capital is so full of theatrical, brightly dressed individuals that I prefer to think it may actually mean what it says. This week, we'll take a reading tour of one of the most spirited communities in Asia. The Philippines is full of wordplay. The local accent, in which F and P are fairly interchangeable, is often used very cleverly, such as at the flower shop in Diliman called Petal Attraction. Much of the wordplay in the Philippines is deliberate, with retailers favoring witty names, often based on Western celebrities and movies. Reader Elgar Esteban found a bread shop called Anita Bakery, a 24-hour restaurant called Doris Day and Night, a garment shop called Elizabeth Tailoring, and a hairdresser called just the cut. Smart travelers can decipher initially baffling signs by simply trying out a Taglish accent, such as that used on a sign at a restaurant in Cebu. We have soft drink in can and in bottle. A sewing accessory shop called Bees and Pieces also makes use of the local accent. Ladies and gentlemen, of course there are also many signs with oddly chosen words, but they are usually so entertaining that it would be a tragedy to correct them. A reader named Antonio Tony Boy Ramonti Ongsiaco found the following. In a restaurant in Baguio, wanted, boy waitress. On a highway in Pampanga, we make modern antique furniture. On the window of a photography shop in Cabanatuan, we shoot you while you wait. On the glass wall of an eatery in Panay Avenue in Manila, wanted, waiter, cashier, washier. Some of the notices one sees are thought-provoking. A shoe store in Pangasinan has a sign saying, "We sell imported rubber shoes." Could this be the sneakiest form of sneakers? On a house in Haro, Iloilo, one finds a sign saying, "House for rent, fully furnished." Tony Boy commented, "Boy, it must be hot in there." Occasionally, the signs are quite poignant. Reader Ganila Edmund saw one at the ferry pier outside Davao, southern Philippines, which said, "Adults, $1, child, 50 cents, cadavers, subject to negotiation." But most are purely witty and display love of Americana. Reader Robert Harland spotted a bakery called Bread Pit, a Makati fast food place selling maruya called Maruya Curry, a local burger restaurant called McDonald's, a donut shop called McDonuts, a shop selling lumpia in Makati called Rock and Roll, and two butchers called Meeting Place and Metropolis. Tourists from Europe may be intrigued to discover shops called Holland Hopia and Poland Hopia. Both sell a type of Chinese pastry called Hopia. What's the story? The names are explained thus. Holland Hopia is the domain of a man named Hop, and Poland Hopia is run by a man named Paul. Tony Boy Ongsiaco explained why there is so much wit in the Philippines. We come from a country where you require a sense of humor to survive. He said, "We have a 24-hour comedy show here called The Government, and a huge reserve of comedians made up mostly of politicians and bad actors." Thank you.
Parenting is a tough job that comes with big responsibility. Therefore, it is crucial that parents should have resilient character in defending their children, no matter what it may cost. Let us listen to one such determination in the defense of his son against the death penalty. Contestant number 5.
The Death Penalty by Victor Hugo. Gentlemen of the jury, if there is a culprit here, it is not my son. It is myself. It is I who, for these 24 years, have opposed capital punishment, have contended for the inviolability of human life, have committed this crime for which my son is now arraigned. Here, I denounce myself, Mr. Advocate General. I have committed it under all aggravating circumstances, deliberately, repeatedly, tenaciously. Yes, this old and absurd lex talionis, this law of blood, I have combated all my life. All my life, gentlemen of the jury. And while I have breath, I will continue to combat it by all my efforts as a writer, by all my words and all my votes as a legislator. I declare it before the crucifix, before that victim of the penalty of death who sees and hears us, before that gibbet to which 2,000 years ago, for the eternal instruction of the generations, the human law nailed the divine. In all that my son has written on the subject of capital punishment, for writing and publishing that for which he is now on trial, in all that he has written, he has merely proclaimed the sentiments with which, from his infancy, I have inspired him. Gentlemen, jurors, the right to criticize a law and to criticize it severely, especially a penal law, is placed beside the duty of amelioration, like the torch beside the work under the artisan's hand. The right of a journalist is as sacred, as necessary, as imprescriptible as a right of a legislator. What are the circumstances? A man, a convict, a sentenced wretch is dragged on a certain morning to one of our public squares. There he finds the scaffold. He shudders. He struggles. He refuses to die. The victim clings to the scaffold and shrieks for pardon. His clothes are torn, his shoulders bloody. Still he resists. They drag him forth, haggard, bloody, weeping, pleading, howling for life, calling upon God, calling upon his father and mother. For like a very child has this man become in the prospect of death. They drag him forth to execution. He is hoisted on the scaffold, and his head falls. And then through our very conscience runs a shudder. Never has legal murder appeared with an aspect so indecent, so abominable. All feel jointly implicated in his death. It is at this very moment that from a young man's breast escapes a cry, wrung from his very heart. A cry of pity and of anguish. A cry of horror. A cry of humanity. And this cry, you would punish? And in the face of the appalling facts which I have narrated, you would say to the guillotine, thou art right. And to pity, saintly pity, thou art wrong. Gentlemen of the jury, it cannot be. Gentlemen, I have finished. Thank you.
Filipinos share one common trait, the love for food. In his article, A Matter of Taste, Matthew Sutherland tells us of his exploration of the Filipino culture. His quest has led him to some quirky discoveries that reveal a lot about the Filipino culture. To an outsider like Sutherland, the assimilation of one's culture entails being perceptive to the way locals live. As a British journalist stationed in the Philippines, he wrote about his encounter with all things grand and bizarre. Contestant number 6.
A Matter of Taste by Matthew Sutherland. Ladies and gentlemen, I have now been in this country for over 6 years and consider myself, in most respects, well assimilated. However, there is one key step on the road to full assimilation, which I have yet to take, and that is to eat balot. The day any one of you sees me eating balot, a fertilized duck egg commonly sold with salt and a piece of newspaper, much like English fish and chips, sold by street vendors, usually after dark, presumably so you can see how gross it is. Please call immigration and ask them to issue me a Filipino passport, because at that point, there will be no turning back. People here just love to eat. They eat at least 7 times a day. Breakfast, snacks, lunch, merienda, merienda cena, dinner, and bedtime snacks. The short gaps in between these meal times are spent eating skyflakes. You're never far from food in the Philippines. Firstly, a meal is not a meal without rice, especially at breakfast. A bottle of San Miguel beer isn't the same without gambas or beef tapa. Some foreigners think Filipino food is fairly dull compared to other Asian cuisinery. But actually, lots of it are very good. Spicy dishes like the Bicol Express, a strange dish named after a train, or anything cooked with coconut milk, anything kinlao, and anything adobo. It's hard to beat the sheer wanton cholesterolic frenzy of a good old-fashioned lechon de leche feast, a roast pig, dig pit, light a fire, add 50 pounds of animal fat on a stick, and cook until crispy. Malutong. You can actually feel your arteries constricting with each successive mouthful. Filipinos also eat strange parts of animals. The feet, the head, the guts, usually barbecued on a stick. These have been given witty names like Adidas, chicken feet, kurbata, chicken neck, or necktie. You know, neck and thigh. Walkman, pig's ears. Pal, chicken wings. You know, like Philippine Airlines. Helmet, chicken head. IUD, chicken intestines. And Betamax, video cassette-like blocks of animal blood. Yum, yum. Bon appetit. When I arrived in the Philippines from London 6 years ago, one of the first cultural differences to strike me were names. The subject has provided a continuing source of amazement and amusement. Everyone here just seems to have a cutesy nickname. Where I come from, a boy or a girl with a name like Boy Blue or Honey Boy or Girl would be beaten to death at school by pre-adolescent bullies and never make it to adulthood. Girls with names like Babes, Lovely, Peachy, or Apples. Here, however, no one bats an eyelid. I noticed that many people here have doorbell names. These are nicknames that sound like doorbells. Bing bong, ding dong, ting ting, and dong are the more common. Even the once appointed chief of police had a doorbell name. Bing! Repeating names is a novelty to me, having never before encountered people with names like Len Len, Let Let, Mai, and Ning Ning. Parents create whole families of desserts. Apple pie, cherry pie, honey pie, or flowers like rose, daffodil, magnolia, and tulip. Another whole eye-opening field for a foreign visitor like me is the phenomenon of the composite name, like Jejimar for Jesus, Joseph, and Mary, and the remarkable Luz Viminda for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. How wonderful it is to come to a country where imagination and exotism rule the world of names. Even the same towns here have weird names. My favorite is the unbelievably named town of Sasmuan. Where else in the world can that be true? Thank you.
May we request the first 6 finalists to leave the stage and join the other participants. Thank you. The competition is definitely heating up. But before we continue with the next set of finalists, let us give way to the High School Glee Club.